Hey everyone, it's Lukinator 23 and we are getting extremely close to the Super Mario Bros. Movie. I gotta be honest, it's surprising to see how long we've come from this movie. I mean, from people originally hating the idea of some of these actors playing these characters, to actually liking the voices we've heard so far. I mean, the idea of Chris Pratt as Mario, did anybody actually predict this? Or even Jack Black as Bowser? When the cast was first announced, a lot of people had thought the movie had a very good chance of being a terrible film. But as soon as the first trailer came, everyone's tune changed. Everyone was now starting to say that this has a very good chance of being the best video game movie in existence. Whether that be the cameos,
is that Diddy Kong and Dixie Kong?
Or even the music. It just genuinely feels like Mario. And of course, there's so many people who are anxiously awaiting for this movie. And while I am amongst the many, if not millions, of people who are anxiously waiting for this movie, I actually wanted to talk about something I don't see many people talking about. How successful this movie will be. Because this may still shock even the biggest Mario fan. The Mario movie has a very good chance of being a massive success. Yep, you heard me right. I think this movie will make more money than Wario could ever imagine. Now, there are just a few reasons as to why I believe this. The first one is, of course, the most obvious, the initial fan reaction. It comes to no shock that the idea of a Mario movie sounds a little weird. Probably because of the fact that the game series itself is kind of weird if you think about it. I mean, an Italian plumber from Brooklyn saving a princess in a magical land. Yeah, that does sound pretty weird if you think about it. And the general plot of the games are rather linear. All the games basically have the same plot. Princess Peach gets kidnapped by Bowser, the evil king of the Koopas, and basically Mario has to go rescue her. That's basically a bunch of the games. And I'm not trying to make fun of it or anything, as I love that simple storyline, but making that into a movie would probably be a little boring. And a lot of hardcore Mario fans knew that if a good Mario movie were likely, it probably wouldn't happen because Nintendo likes to stick with that traditional storyline and ignore the very interesting stuff like in the RPG games. But those people would still go see this movie because it's Mario, and them as Mario fans want to see how this turns out, but they weren't exactly excited to go see that. But then they watched the initial cast announcement, and more specifically the trailers, and now those people cannot wait to see the Mario movie. This is now their most anticipated release of 2023. And as much as they hate the idea of Chris Pratt as Mario, they're just gonna have to get over it. But now to move on to some other stuff that's a little bit more interesting, let's move on to our second reason. The company making this movie, Illumination. Now, the mere mention of this company may get a lot of people angry, and that's because this company is known to make some of the most iconic movies possible, particularly Despicable Me and, of course, Minions. Now, for time's sake, I'm just gonna move on to one big reason why people hate this studio, and it's because of their goal. You see, most animation studios spend about $100 million or so per movie. Although in recent years, we've seen a significant rise in that. Most anime movies now cost close to $1 billion to make. Illumination doesn't even spend that much on their movies. They spend nearly half of that. They spend about $50 million to $90 million. And that is crazy to think. But let me clarify, there's nothing wrong with making an intentionally cheap movie. After all, the whole point of a Hollywood movie is to make way more money than you spend. But at the same time, if that goal is right there in your mission statement, that is when it starts to feel a little weird. People want their movies to be filled with passion and joy to some degree. People especially want to watch a movie that they know they'll enjoy because of its quirky characters and not simply made to sell toys. Another glaring issue with cheap movies is their quality. Will it look good? Will it be funny? Once again, nothing wrong with embracing your budget. One of my all-time favorite anime movies was made on a cheap budget, and it was legitimately funny, and it looked pretty good. Again, cheap does not have to be bad. With Illumination's movies, it looks visually impressive, but sometimes their movies are just not funny whatsoever. Now, this is my opinion, and if you disagree with me, that's totally fine. I kind of like some of their movies. I love the first two Despicable Me movies. Minions was a surprise, and when it comes to the Lorax, absolutely love that film. But at the same time, with some of their other films, they just don't really hit the mark. Secret Life of Pets 1 and 2 should have been a short instead of a movie. The Grinch remake was okay and all, but I didn't really enjoy it as much as I should have. Hop Let's pretend that movie never existed. And despite me saying Minions was a shock, I kind of hate some of its humor in it. Some of it can be funny depending on how it's delivered, but at the same time, it's not entirely funny. It's just fart joke this, fart joke that. But at the end of the day, we have to embrace Illumination's goal. It works. Despite what I just said, people hating this studio, they still make more money than Disney at times. Seriously, looking at the history of all of Illumination's films, they've only gotten better and better at filling people into these seats. I'm serious when I say that they are in the business to sell. And now, moving on to the final reason I'm absolutely certain this movie will make a huge chunk of money: familiarity. To illustrate, I'm actually going to move on to Hollywood as a whole and talk about two specific types of movies that they've been putting out a lot in recent years: remakes and sequels. Let's start with the most hated one, remakes. For those who don't know what a remake is essentially a newer version of an older film. For example, The Jungle Book. The Jungle Book came out in 1967, and there was a remake that released in 2016. To a lot of moviegoers, the idea of remaking a nearly beloved classic is absolutely idiotic. But at the same time, it's probably the smartest thing that these big multi-millionaire companies have done. Now, when it comes to remakes, the qualities vary. As I mentioned before, The Jungle Book, it did get a remake, and I personally enjoyed it. The Aladdin remake was also pretty good. But when it comes to some other remakes, I tend to hate some of them. Now, moving on to sequels. Sequels, for those who do not know, is a continuation of a previous storyline, most commonly movies. A good example would be Puss in Boots: The Last Wish, a sequel to the 2011 film Puss in Boots. So many people go to watch these sequels a lot, whether that be a big superhero movie like a Marvel film, or sometimes a sequel to a long-lost movie like Top Gun. People love sequels, to some extent. When you talk about some sequels that people hate, but still pay lots of money to see, it would probably be Star Wars. Seriously, it doesn't matter how much people hate Star Wars now. It doesn't matter how much Disney's been messing up with the storyline. If it's a numbered Star Wars sequel, a lot of people go to see it. Now, sequels do make a little bit more sense in terms of why people go to see them, as they are, of course, continuous plots, and they continue to add brand new storyline to an ever-expanding universe. But let's go back to the remakes. Despite a lot of people hating these movies, people intentionally go to see it. But the question is, why? Why do people want to go watch a movie with a near identical script, but with almost none of the charm and love put into it? Why do these movies make a lot of money? Now, don't get me wrong, a lot of people want to be surprised with these movies. That's why a lot of people go see them. Because a lot of times, remakes tend to add some sort of new content to it. But ultimately, remakes make a lot of money because of one thing: they're familiar. The main reason most people go to watch these remakes is because they're familiar with these characters and storylines, and they don't want it any other way. Especially families. They don't want to watch a new movie if it gets too weird or too political. They want to watch a movie that they know they'll enjoy. That's why remakes and sequels are dominating the box office right now. I personally wish that remakes weren't doing so well, because sometimes they're not really worth it. But at the same time, I'm not going to be upset with somebody if they like a remake. But now, the conclusion that I'm pretty sure all of you have already guessed by now: who is the most familiar character in video games? Who's the character that has most likely gotten your interest in video games? The character that has a nice warm nostalgia no matter how old you are? Who is the Mickey Mouse of video games? If you guessed Mario, you'd be right. Video game movies have had a very rough history. Hilariously enough, the first video game movie was actually the Super Mario Bros. Movie, but that movie was a complete failure from start to finish, and that has continuously been the tone of almost every video game movie after that. There have been a few exceptions, absolutely, but for the most part, most video game movies do absolutely terrible at the box office. I guess you could say that they try to appeal to massive audiences, but they fail to please any audience. However, it hasn't always been like this. As of recent, video game movies have actually been getting better. Both Sonic 1 and 2 and Detective Pikachu did financially well at the box office, and they did something that nobody thought. It pleased their respective fan bases more than any other video game movie prior combined. But here's the thing: despite both Sonic and Pokemon being really huge franchises, they're also very limited with their fan bases. What I mean is, not too many people played these games unless they grew up with them. I mean, do you see a lot of 45-year-olds trying their best to defend Sonic Unleashed online, or spending hours and hours collecting Pokemon cards? Do those people exist? Absolutely. But are they common? Mario, on the other hand. Everyone has played a Mario game. Everyone has liked a Mario game at some point. Mario has reached a level of familiarity far beyond any other video game character. He's a beloved, cherished icon. And so many people, even today, still play the old Mario games and still enjoy them. So as such, I believe that a lot of people, if not everyone, is going to see the Mario movie. And I mean everyone. People like me who've grown up with the series ever since they were old enough to hold a controller in their hands. Younger kids who actually have Switch lights and have Mario-themed tennis shoes. The parents of those kids who may have grown up with the arcade games. Even the grandparents may go see this movie. This will be true at any given moment, but if you think about it, it especially works now. Given that the Switch has been Nintendo's best-selling console, and Mario is selling even better than ever. Seriously, this has got to be Nintendo's best year to even make a Mario movie. I repeat, everyone is going to see this. Now, there's no way of predicting exactly how much money this movie will bring in, but I don't think the number is that insignificant. I honestly think it would be close to $1 billion, right up with Illumination's other movies. If it exceeds $1 billion, that will not surprise me whatsoever. After all, as I mentioned, the Mario series is probably one of the most iconic video game series of all time. Hey, maybe I'm wrong and it'll probably make less than that, but you know what? At the very least, I think it will be profitable for both Illumination and Nintendo, and I'm pretty certain that they feel confident in that too. But then, that begs the question, what does this mean for the future of Nintendo and movies? If I'm right and the Mario movie makes a good chunk of money, I don't think Nintendo would want that to go to waste. I strongly think that Nintendo will want to expand into a Nintendo Cinematic Universe. But not quite yet. We know that Nintendo Studios is already a thing, and we know that that company is specifically made for visual content for Nintendo, which could very well mean movies, but at the same time, I don't think a Legend of Zelda movie could happen anytime soon, or a Pikmin movie, or a Star Fox movie. I really think we might need to keep our expectations in check when it comes to that. But outside of the Mario series, what's another series that closely ties into Mario? I think it's Donkey Kong. Now, Donkey Kong isn't quite as iconic or beloved as Mario, but he's where it all started after all, and when Nintendo is really confident that a follow-up movie could be good, I think your only real option is DK. Again, I think we might need to hold our expectations just for now for a Nintendo Cinematic Universe, but at least for the next few years, I could see a whole lot of Mario spin-offs. Now, in terms of what these spin-offs could be, I feel like that's best saved for another video if you guys would like that. And speaking of which, why not hit subscribe to stay up to date with the latest videos I put out. And if you guys enjoyed what you saw, also leave a like. And as always, thank you all so much for watching. Make sure to share, like, and subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next video.